international relations. And so he's going to talk to us today about U.S. foreign policy, and then I'm going to give you guys a couple of quick announcements right after class, but let's hear it for Tristan.
Hi, how's everybody doing today? Not so exciting for the last week of class. Or a Monday for the last week of class. So I'm Tristan. Dr. Ross, I'm a PhD at you. I study international relations, public policy, and political methods. When I'm not, I teach two sections for the lab in the morning class. And when I'm not doing that, I'm doing research on economic warfare and critical mineral markets, modeling country and state behavior decision making, and occasionally look into nuclear weapons and the U.S. nuclear posture. All of my work is a little bit different from most things done at a research institution like OU. All of mine is from the perspective of being applied, meaning that I design research with the intention to inform the national security community of emerging threats, how to manage them, and hopefully provide solutions to them. The goal, ultimately, is to shape favorable outcomes for U.S. foreign policy, which is what we're going to be talking about today. I love U.S. foreign policy. I think you should too. That's my elevator pitch to you all today. It's a topic that people are really quick to draw an opinion about. But in all reality, people don't often know a whole lot about U.S. foreign policy. And that's a problem. And they ask, why is that so? That people know so little, but it's so easy to have an opinion about. Well, for one, U.S. foreign policy can be very difficult to communicate to the American public. And then when it is easily conveyed, the public just doesn't care or doesn't want to know all the intricacies about it. In the United States, we live a pretty insulated, cushy lifestyle, shielded from the complexities on the global stage. However, what goes on outside the United States has an effect on what goes on inside it. It has a direct impact on all of you. Whether it's economic turbulence in the global market, a coup in one part of the world, climate change, creating food and water scarcity. These are all issues that impact the United States, its foreign policy, and again, these things impact you. As I said, U.S. foreign policy is very complex. That cannot be overstated enough. I had a really hard time trying to narrow down what I was going to lecture on today, but I think I picked out some pretty good topics. I hope you find them interesting. It has a deep and rich history, lots of actors, lots of intricacies, lots of different types of strategies and conditions on when they're used. For the most part today, I'm going to spare you the excessive history. Naturally, it's going to come out, parts of it. But I cannot emphasize enough how important overall, though, this history is and its role in shaping our relations with other countries and our standing in the world today. So the goal for today is to discuss what foreign policy is, Why is it important? Its key components, who makes it, what the future of U.S. foreign policy looks like, and more importantly, what does this mean for you? All countries engage in foreign policy. They are policies designed to shape the world and in the U.S. specific context to protect U.S. national and economic security. There are three key components: diplomacy, defense, and intelligence. We could spend years on just one of those, but I'll give you a quick synopsis of all three today. Diplomacy is everything that countries do to advocate for their national interests around the world. They have a variety of tools at their disposal, including sanctions, foreign assistance, trade, and if diplomacy doesn't work, armed force. There are a variety of different scenarios in which type of diplomacy to use. And we'll go over this here in a minute. But diplomacy is the oldest U.S. foreign policy practice. We've been doing diplomacy since before our country was a country. It was integral in securing support from the French that helped us win the American Revolution. And we've been involved in diplomacy around the world ever since. Its goal is to protect and promote U.S. security and values to shape an environment where Americans can thrive and prosper. And when this is done through international agreements, free trade agreements, environmental protocols, weapons bans, or limitations. And the U.S. is strategically a part and not a part of certain international agreements. Does anybody know what big ticket item the United States is not a part of as an international agreement? Yeah.
The Paris climate thing?
So they've rejoined the Paris Accord, but so we'll get into a little bit of that later. But at one for 4 years they weren't.
Yeah.
So, but there's a couple out there. But probably the most infamous is the International Criminal Court, which tries human rights violations. The U.S. doesn't recognize it, as it argues that it is a violation of U.S. sovereignty because any human rights violations in the United States conducted by soldiers or during wartime can be tried and prosecuted adequately here. And if you're a part of the International Criminal Court, it opens up all kinds of different avenues for prosecution. So, to influence countries' behaviors to promote national interests, it comes in many forms. It can be done through negotiations, consultations, back-channel talks, summits and conferences, and day-to-day diplomacy. Negotiations are formal discussions between countries, such as free trade agreements. Consultations are forward-looking conversations that address collective action problems, such as climate change. Back-channel talks are typically secret diplomatic cables that are going in and out of war zones or countries that are experiencing conflict due to terrorist organizations and activities. Summits and conferences, most of the time, those are good photo opportunities, but they're still important. They're important for heads of state to gather, convene, and discuss. For example, Joe Biden had been in office for probably about a year and a half, had not had any face-to-face time with President Xi Jinping of China. I don't believe that they had any formal discussions prior to the G20 summit in Indonesia this past fall. So while it was a great opportunity to take photos, they still were able to come to meet and try to settle some tensions between the countries. One interesting element about summits and conferences and their federal opportunities is that the United States requires the president to always be on the right side. And as you can start to see some diplomatic haggling here. So while that is the case for the photos, Chinese diplomats require that whoever the president of China is taking pictures with has to walk towards the person. And they use it all for different types of things. So propaganda is doing that. And then there's day-to-day diplomacy. There are thousands of foreign service officers and consulate heads around the world advancing the U.S. diplomatic mission. Another important diplomatic tool is foreign aid. It is necessary to advance national security and economic goals. It's used to develop closer relations and strengthen countries that could become strategically important allies and trade partners. And it's also done to help people in countries who are in desperate need. It's used to address civil unrest, economic strife, food insecurity, and other humanitarian issues. It takes two primary forms through economic aid and military aid, as well as multilateral economic aid. For example, the United States is the largest contributor to the IMF and the World Bank, meaning that they have large control over how that aid is distributed from those two organizations. And in all cases, where money buys you influence, the same is in foreign policy. Foreign aid is used to influence elections in other countries to ensure that candidates win who are favorable to U.S. foreign policy interests. It's been used in voting to influence voting outcomes at the UN General Assembly and on the rotating members of the UN Security Council. But it's also used to lead to democratic, humanitarian, economic reforms. So oftentimes when aid is distributed, there are conditions attached to it that countries who are receiving it have to make changes in the U.S.'s interest. It's also used to improve trade relations. And this is one area of research that I have been doing quite a bit of work in, is that it's also, aid disbursements are competitive. For example, since the fall of the Soviet Union, there are now more aid donors than just the United States. For example, China is distributing aid at breakneck pace through the Belt and Road Initiative all across the world. And the U.S. is now having to compete in this space for influence through this foreign policy tool. Now, aid is a pretty partisan issue. Conservatives hate it when it goes to certain countries for certain reasons, but they love it when it goes to other countries for certain reasons. Liberals hate it because of those same exact reasons. So this is your poll question for today, is should the U.S. distribute aid to foreign countries? And the password is aid, A-I-D, all caps. Anybody need more time? So now we're going to discuss this. Should the U.S. distribute aid to foreign countries? Okay, so I got a yes right here.
You mentioned that it's a good like policy tool, and I think that that's my main reason for saying yes. There's a way to kind of look at US with US points in certain situations.
Pretty Machiavellian over here. I'm gonna call on some. Is that a hand? Oh man, you're really hitting me. There.
I'd say no, in terms of not right now, but I feel like there's so much wrong in our country. Developing of our country. And we can start worrying about others.
Okay. So he saved this section over here. Now we're over here. This is the hero on this side. I'm gonna call on somebody. We'll go with. Okay. We'll go right here. What do you think? No. No? Why or why not? Or why not? Okay. So these are all valid points to distribute aid and not to distribute aid. The United States does have tons of problems on its own that it has to address. However, for those who are the critics, with regard to foreign aid and U.S. foreign policy more broadly, I want you to heed this quote by Richard Haass, who is probably one of the most prolific ambassadors and diplomats in U.S. foreign policy corps, one of the greatest foreign policy minds of our time. He's currently the president of the Council on Foreign Relations. We've got to pay attention to the world, not only as an act of philanthropy, but as an act of self-interest. So, for philanthropic reasons, I like to use this metaphor of professional athletes. You always see professional athletes get criticized. They have all this money. Why can't they do more for their community? But the same kind of applies here. The country with the largest GDP, we have some money to spare for moralistic reasons. But also, you can't turn your back on the world. You don't distribute aid, you lose serious influence in areas all around the world. So the second aspect of U.S. foreign policy is defense. Defense is used to deter attacks against the United States and its allies, forcefully protect interests, and defend democratic values. There are lots of elements to this that we won't cover, but for purposes of today, I'm going to discuss armed force and deterrence. Before that, though, just a few things. The United States has the most advanced military and military technology in the world. We spend more money on defense than the next several countries combined. Yet it's also still like a wee small fraction of our GDP. We have over 175,000 troops across 159 different countries, strategically placed all across the world. Our military engages in joint exercises with allies. We used to engage in exercises with Russia and China, not so much anymore. because they were used as opportunities to engage one another, learn from one another, and to be a diplomatic bridge. We also distribute lots of military aid. But with regard to the armed force, it's used to pursue various interests, including combating terrorist threats. The war on terror was not a war against countries. It was a war against terrorist organizations, some of them who have become so organized and so well-resourced that they have taken on state-like capacities. But nonetheless, they have not and are not countries of themselves. So it's a really difficult issue when it comes to upholding the values of sovereignty in the international community and addressing problems like terrorism. Armed force has been used to address humanitarian problems, such as the Serbian War in the 1990s. And it's been used to get rid of unfavorable regimes, such as Saddam Hussein in Iraq. It's also used to quash civil unrest. Now, you may have seen the National Guard's been deployed for riot control and out-of-control protests. But we don't really see our military used in the way that other countries use it to deal with civil problems. It's also used to secure access to resources. For example, during the First Persian Gulf War, U.S. armed forces were sent to Saudi Arabia to protect the oil fields. However, it's important to note with regard to self-defense that the U.S. has not faced an attack on its own soil since World War II. The other aspect that we're going to talk about is deterrence, which is used to convince actors who are behaving badly with the threat of significant punishment. Now, done correctly, deterrence can be very effective. It can be used as a good tool to maintain peace, which is truthfully the goal in all of these foreign policy outcomes. Peace is good for business and for U.S. national interests. However, threatening a severe retaliation can cause more harm than good. These threats of deterrence have to have weight to them. And they are most commonly associated with nuclear weapons. Does anybody know the U.S. nuclear posture? MAD, mutually assured destruction, which means that if you attack us, hold on 1 second. What'd you say? That's exactly right. So if you attack the United States with nuclear weapons, we're going to be kicking from the grave. The third aspect of U.S. foreign policy operates through intelligence, whose goal is to utilize insights, information, and understanding of both friends and adversaries to advance national security, economic interests, and maintain technological superiority. Intelligence is all, like diplomacy, has always been around. We've had spies in the American Revolution, through every major conflict since, and non-major conflict. But it became more formalized with the creation of the Office of Strategic Services in World War II, which then went on to become the CIA. And while the CIA receives most of the attention because of their fun history to think about, there are 16 other major agencies across military branches, the Department of Energy, the Department of the Treasury, and the Defense Intelligence Agency, as well as the FBI and other elements of DOJ, that are all working together in the intelligence community. So this is how intelligence works. It consists of 5 stages. It starts with planning, where policymakers ask the intelligence community to collect information on specific issues. Those policymakers can come from the House, from the Senate, committees, intelligence committees, or from the Foreign Relations or Armed Services committees, as well as the President, the National Security Council, but also all across the military as well. This kicks off then the collection process. Intelligence collection can take on many forms. I'm sure we've all seen the James Bond movie or some parody of it. But these collection activities include infiltrating a military installation, taking a picture from outer space, going undercover in an extremist group, intercepting an email, looking through trash at the right time, or simply scanning the news. So while the CIA and all of these intelligence organizations and their activities are top secret, they do have entire divisions dedicated to open source intelligence that just scans the news, looks at easy to find satellite images, sometimes using somebody's Twitter handle. They have like a bot that tracks things. After that, it's then processed. Now, like I said, we collect information on everything. It's like searching one word in Google and getting like 10 trillion results. So at this stage in the process, all that information is taken together, put together in something that can be easily communicated. After which, intelligence analysts figure out what information is most important to convey. So the president every day receives something that's called the president's inbox. It's just a little brief, 2 to 3 pages, probably shorter, of the most important issues going around the world today. And that's what the final product looks like. Afterwards, it's disseminated to various policymakers, usually the ones who ask, for that collection to be taken up. But at the end of it all, the U.S. military is the largest intelligence consumer. Intelligence can also take up these 3 forms as well through covert action. Covert action are activities that influence political, economic, or military outcomes abroad in a way that the U.S. can deny all knowledge of involvement. They include paramilitary action, usually involving the training of a group of armed soldiers. It can be political or economic, such as tampering with elections, channeling funds to rival political groups, disrupting commodity markets, such as poisoning crops, And it also takes place through propaganda, also known as psychological warfare. And this is the element of winning the hearts and minds of people to turn favorable opinion towards the United States, or an issue, or a leader that's favorable towards the United States. So who makes all this? The president and Congress are your primary actors. There's other agency heads in there as well. But I cannot emphasize this last point enough. There are thousands of Foreign Service and intelligence officers, military personnel, trade officials, researchers, civilians, and other public servants that dedicate their entire lives to U.S. foreign policy. The president nominates cabinet positions, ambassadors, and other senior military officers. They have the power to recognize other governments from other countries. They have the power to negotiate treaties on behalf of the United States. And they are the commander-in-chief. They have the authority to deploy the country's armed forces and collect foreign intelligence. In one position, the president is the head of the military, head of the U.S. State Department, its diplomatic goals, and the leader of the intelligence community. At the other end of the spectrum, you have Congress, which determines the amount of federal funding for all of these activities. It has the exclusive power to declare war. It regulates foreign commerce, which includes the power to impose tariffs and sanctions. So all the sanctions that are coming out against Russia and China come from Congress. The president can make a recommendation or call on Congress to make them, but Congress ultimately has the decision-making power on when and who to assign sanctions to. The Senate approves the nominations of cabinet members, ambassadors, and senior military officials. Now, on this last point, after 9/11, the 9/11 Commission ultimately chalked up the outcome of 9/11 to two major reasons. That's hard to do, but the two biggest contributors that they said were, first, poorly integrated intelligence, meaning that intelligence wasn't being communicated fast enough or good enough. But the other thing that they noted was a huge problem, was unfilled ambassador positions. After that, you pretty much saw the Senate approve ambassador nominations quickly. Hardly ever was there one held up. Hardly ever was there one that didn't get pushed through. However, now, there are over 50 plus unfilled ambassador positions across two presidential administrations. That's Democrats in the Senate holding up President Trump's ambassador nominations. That's Republicans holding up ambassador positions under President Biden. The Ukraine ambassador position had not been filled since 2018. And finally, the Senate approves treaty. Seems like a pretty strong separation of powers, right? Well, oftentimes, the president and Congress typically seem to be working at odds with one another. The president does not need congressional approval to send the military anywhere before doing so. Depending on the circumstances, the president has to inform Congress of any military action within 48 hours, but not always. The president can authorize executive agreements, such as the Paris Accord, without presidential approval, without Senate approval. As brought up earlier, Barack Obama entered into agreement to the Paris Accords, subverting the Senate. Donald Trump pulled out of the Paris Accords, subverting the Senate. And President Biden rejoined them. Same case, same scenario, same circumstance. As I mentioned, the Senate has increasingly held up appointments for various positions, not just ambassadors. Some of them for good reason, some of them not really. And then the National Defense Authorization Act. This is the giant bill that the United States Congress pushes forward onto the president's desk that funds all of U.S. foreign policy across defense, diplomacy, and intelligence. It has traditionally been passed annually. For the first time, breaking the 50-year precedent since its inception, President Trump vetoed it in 2020. Congress overrode the veto, and the military and the intelligence community and all the people who work in U.S. foreign policy were funded. Under President Biden, Congress has consistently exceeded its request. In 2021, President Biden asked for $700 billion to be allocated for U.S. foreign policy. Congress sent him a much larger bill for $780 billion. And politics used to stop at the border. At one point in time, Congress and the president were in sync and lockstep with one another when it came to foreign policy. That started to erode after Vietnam, the War Powers Act. It started to erode even further with Iran-Contra. And it's continued to erode ever since. Now you see the president often criticizing Congress for their stances on foreign policy, and vice versa. You see Congress criticizing the president. It used to be primarily, we're one team. We work together. Despite this, though, the president and Congress have accomplished a lot of U.S. foreign policy goals together. And this is just the last 8 years. Maybe 6. There's broad consensus on support for Ukraine and Taiwan. They passed the CHIPS and Science Act, which invests heavily in mining and refining minerals in the United States and developing new technologies for national security and economic purposes, all while implementing tough trade controls on China. And it's also worked to the benefit of creating the International Development Finance Corporation, whose sole purpose is to allocate foreign aid better and more strategically. For example, foreign aid allocations following Afghanistan, especially on the military side, following Afghanistan and Iraq, were largely seen as failures. Mostly because of the outcomes. Once the U.S. pulled out, foreign aid distributions did not come to fruition. The host governments ultimately capitulated, fell apart. So the International Development Finance Corporation, along with other members of the U.S. foreign policy community, conduct what's called post-mortem analysis. 3 groups of men. But it's to assess aid failures and design better programs for aid to be more successful. So this leads us to the future of U.S. foreign policy. The Council on Foreign Relations conducts an annual survey of all U.S. national security officials, asking them what they think the biggest threat this upcoming year is, the next 5 years, next 10, and the next 50. This is what top national security experts note as their top tier risks. China will increasingly become a risk to U.S. foreign policy, U.S. foreign strength in the world, both on economic and military front. The Arctic, climate change is happening. As the Arctic thaws, it will open up opportunities for new resources to be produced, from minerals to oil and gas, as well as create new trade routes and new conflict opportunities for territorial gains. Increasingly, China, despite not being an Arctic country, is wading into the Arctic space. On that same note, those experts also discussed climate security as a huge concern for the future of U.S. interests and global stability. A couple months ago, I had the pleasure of attending the Oklahoma Defense Symposium, which hosted some of these experts. It was really interesting to listen to the panel that talked about climate security, noting how changes in the climate are affecting fighting seasons in different parts of the world, how different non-state actors are receiving funds or not receiving funds to fund their activities because of changes to crop cultivations, such as opium. They also noted that with these changing conditions, that climate security or insecurity will destabilize regions of the world that the U.S. had not previously been a part of. The demand for non-fuel minerals, critical minerals, is important for U.S. foreign policy interests in the future. Much like oil and gas, these minerals that are integral for economic and national security, innovating the nuclear arsenal, creating new technologies that the United States can export to other countries and create new markets. Those minerals are geographically concentrated in countries that can monopolize and cartelize the markets. They noted the expansion of the armed conflict in Ukraine to spill over to other NATO members. They warned of highly disruptive cyber and information warfare. We're about to go into an election season. You bet you're going to see propaganda and influence operations in the United States. Not to scare you, I listened to an interview a couple weeks ago, and it was somebody who worked in information warfare, and they were talking about a conversation that they had with an official from another country. And it was a country that was an ally of the United States. And in this conversation, they were talking about election interference. And this allied official told the U.S. Information Warfare Officer this. They said, why wouldn't we interfere in your elections? Your elections have huge outcomes for us. That's something to be on the lookout for. That goes to show how important U.S. foreign policy is in the world. We are likely to see rising nuclear tensions. North Korea has tested more missile launches than ever before at this point in the year. And we're also likely going to see democratic backsliding in various regions, increased political violence and unrest, worsening economic conditions around the world. So while you can't see them from where you're sitting, or likely actually feel the direct impact of, these things all impact you. It will impact you today. It will impact you tomorrow and far into the future. And most importantly, recruitment and retention. The U.S. foreign policy establishment is having a hard time competing with the private sector through salaries, through benefits, through job cutting and funding cutting. So what does this all mean for you? You should take the time to understand the complexities of foreign policy issues. Don't just have an opinion, have an informed one. It'll really help you understand what these issues truly mean. And when you can, you should try to experience new cultures, languages, and new places. And finally, I hope that you consider a career that contributes to U.S. foreign policy.